Alright, this weekend I'm going to try to get this subframe tore down and get it cleaned up. And I've got the rear end all cleaned up, 373 gears put in, the rear disc brake kit put in. I've got my Hodgkins 2-inch, 1.5-inch lowering springs with the new shackles and all new rubber, all new grommets. I've got the brake lines hooked up and the tubes hooked up. Still waiting on my center brake hose. That reminds me, I gotta call auto parts store, see if it came in. But yeah, this is gonna take some doing here. I've got the tubular A-arms and gonna have to check and see if this power steering gearbox is still any good. Might have to get a refurbished one. We can get it all cleaned up. Alright, this is the carnage after the disassembly of the subframe. And 51 years of rust make it a little challenging to get out cotter pins and shocks, and ended up having to cut the shocks because they just weren't coming loose. So I've learned that you never throw anything away. Not that you're gonna reuse it, but it's good for reference. For instance, these brackets, if you're wanting to get new ones and you throw them away, you have no idea what they even look like. And of course, those are the radiator core support brackets, and I think those are good enough to sandblast, clean them up. And if you're having trouble seeing the diamond in the rough, well, this is what we plan to do with this subframe. We've got the Hotchkiss 2-inch lowering springs, tubular A-arms. Now those front coil springs will go nicely with the Hotchkiss 1.5 to 2-inch drop springs. They're progressive, and I think it'll make for a really nice ride. So we don't have any more interrupting phone calls. I have some new motor mount brackets, and I want to try to get this as low as possible so the 6L80E will clear the tunnel, and maybe we won't have to do a whole lot of hacking away and reconstructing of the tunnel. So that was a pretty good rat's nest in the lower control arms. And this little section of rusty spring was jammed underneath the coil spring, I'm assuming to keep the sagging springs a little bit higher. On the other side, they had the little lift blocks that I guess maybe the front end was dragging, but of course with the new springs and getting these spindles cleaned up, get new calipers, new hoses, and those brakes will go nicely with the mini power brake booster we just got in. And it comes with the proportioner block, but it's disc drum, so I have to get a disc proportioner block and get that all tubed in. And it's pretty. It's not the cast iron one. I figured the cost of getting a cast iron one powder coated, it would cost more, but it's already all powder coated and it'll look nice under the hood. So I've got a lot of cleanup work to do. I think quite possibly Feifel was really busy making his home in the lower control arm. So I've got lots of cleaning up to do, and we'll try to see if we can't get this frame cleaned up and looking really good. Alright, yesterday I got the body mounts repaired. They were the only really bad parts of this frame. The rest of it is pretty good. And today I'm going to sand up inside the the spring pockets, and try to see if I got time to get it painted today. I'm going to spray it down with POR 14 or 15 rather, and maybe spray over the top of it with some gloss black. But I'm getting all the rear suspension is done. I'm trying to get the front suspension done so that we can set the body down on it and mock up the motor and transmission. Probably gonna have to cut the tunnel because the 6L80 is huge, and I just don't think it's gonna fit in that tunnel. Still got a lot to do on the inside because I'm still waiting on the AC. 4 months and still another month to go, and you can see there's a big bare spot underneath there where it should have gone a while ago, but everything's on back order. So I'm gonna get out the little mini sandblaster and try to get some of this frame cleaned out and just stop that rust. Stop it right in its tracks with a POR 15. So here we go. Alright, that's a well-preserved frame. Got POR 15 down inside as far as I could get it. Got it sandblasted out. I got some of the Eastwood internal frame spray that I'm gonna get up inside even farther once this dries. But when I was sandblasting, I was alternating between the little compressor and the big one in the back room, so I had plenty of air, and I think I got it cleaned out pretty good inside. So next thing, once this cures, I can start putting on all the suspension and steering. Get some gotta get these spindles cleaned up, some new rotors, calipers. Got the subframe bushings right there, but it's starting to really come along. We've got the rear frame, or the rear suspension, all put together with the brakes, and got our transmission picked up. So once we get that, the motor and the subframe transmission together, we can look and see what we're going to have to do to clear the tunnel out to get that big old 6L80E to fit up under there. The thing is huge, but ought to be pretty heavy duty for a car, because it's basically a truck transmission. As a matter of fact, it came out of a truck, but same thing that comes in a lot of the later model Camaros. So I'm going to do some more videos of assembling the frame and putting everything together, attaching it to the rear body, leave the fenders and whatnot off so you can start fitting some motor mounts and getting everything lined up, and get the drive shaft cut down, and then we'll have a complete roller. Of course, I'm going to pull it all back apart to paint the body and reassemble it, work on the interior. It's finally coming along. Hasn't quite been a year, but it's getting close. This spring it'll be a year. Hopefully we'll get the motor back from the machine shop within the next month or so, and then we can really start making some progress. pretty much ready for a rolling chassis. We've got our upper, lower control arms, the tubulars. I try to use stainless steel nuts and bolts wherever possible. We've got the rotors on, wheel bearings packed, brake calipers on, brake hoses, brake hose brackets, sandblasted those, cleaned them up, and we've got up here all new steering components, all from eBay Motors. We've got inner and outer tie rod ends, center link, idler arm, got the original power steering gearbox cleaned up and painted. I've got a new rag joint or steering coupler coming. Once I set the body on with all the body mounts, I'm going to fabricate between the two steering columns, 2015 Camaro to the 71 Camaro, so that we'll have a steering shaft. I've got an adapter for the power steering pressure hose coming from eBay that adapts it from the O-ring type in the back of the pump to the flare type fitting. And then of course over here we did the same thing. Got our all of our brake caliper, rotor, everything on, and the bracket of course. Once all that's done, we'll be able to put some wheels on, roll the body in here on the lift, put this subframe on, and start working on brake lines, brake master cylinder, brake proportioner block, and run our brake lines back to the rear end, which we have the all of our front end will go in, and also we'll have our Hotchkiss lowering leaf springs. We've got the 371 gears in the original 71 Camaro. We have our pocket brackets, the rear bushings all ready to go into the body. Even plumbed in the brake hoses, brake lines, center brake hose, and we have our rear disc brake kit all installed, ready to go. Just have to find one more wheel that clears the brakes so we can roll it around, and then of course eventually we're going to get some nice wheels to put on it. At that point, once I have the frame in there and we get our motor back from the machine shop, I can set the motor and transmission on the frame and see how much clearance I'm going to need in the tunnel. I'm almost positive going to have to reform the tunnel, make it a little bit larger to fit the 6L80E that's going to go with the paddle shifters on the 2015 Camaro. Once we get that motor back and a few odds and ends, we'll really start to make some progress on it and have a rolling chassis. So that was today's progress, getting all of the front subframe all assembled and ready to go in.